Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast with Daryl, Morey, and Jimmy Iovine, brought to you by SeatGeek, our presenting sponsor. The easiest way to shop for the best tickets thanks to their revolutionary grading system. Buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps on your phone. Everything fully guaranteed. Right now, my listeners get $10 off baseball tickets the first time they use SeatGeek. Use promo code BSMLB. Download the SeatGeek app today or go right to SeatGeek.com. We're also brought to you by Miller Lite, one of the original sponsors of The Ringer. Miller Lite is brewed to not only taste great, but to also be less filling. It only has 96 calories and won't fill you up. It's brewed to be enjoyed from tip-off to final buzzer. It's the original light beer and has been since they first showed up courtside in 1975. Miller Lite, my favorite beer since the late 1980s. That is a 100% of a fact. Also, we're brought to you by Binge Mode Game of Thrones. Season 5 up right now. They're almost done. We'll see if Mallory Rubin makes it. But they have 5 in the book, 50 episodes if you want to relive Game of Thrones. And then finally, Joe House's new podcast, House of Carbs, launches this week. It is available right now. You can subscribe to it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. House of Carbs, the greatest art we've ever done for a podcast. I am so jealous. Coming up right now, Rockets GM, Daryl Morey. But first, Pearl Jam. Okay, we're taping this 10:30 Monday morning, July 3rd. So if anything crazy happens over the next few hours, don't blame us because Daryl Morey is here. Hi, Daryl.
Thanks for having me on.
Rockets GM. You haven't been on in a while.
Yeah, I think last time I got fined like $100,000 or something, so I'm trying to avoid that this time.
You landed Chris Paul. He's a very famous basketball player who plays well.
We are very excited about that.
Have you met him? Have you hung out with him?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So he's been in LA and came to our Iguodala meeting and
he came to the Iguodala meeting. He's recruiting.
Oh man. So that was a big reason we were excited to get the trade done early because we go into free agent with more tools, trade exception, biannual, full mid-level, and Chris Paul at meetings. So it was pretty good.
That's amazing. So you do that trade early. You get Chris Paul. You give up a couple really good assets. Lou Williams on a great contract. Beverly, who everybody was trying to get last February, good contract. Sam Decker, young wing guy, give up a pick. But the benefit is, and Harrell, who I'm still mad the Celtics didn't take. But so you get Chris Paul.
They missed that. They were going to take him.
I think we had like 7 chances to take him. We just kept not taking him.
He just went one pick earlier.
Yeah, you took him. So Chris Paul comes in, but then because you do the trade early, you create this exception that enables you to get PJ Tucker.
PJ Tucker. Also, the exception allowed us to, go for Iguodala and guys like that. And obviously that didn't work out, but we did get a bunch of guys paid around the league with our trade exception so far. But we'll hold on to that through the season. And I think teams try too much to just make everything perfect right in July. You don't need your best team on July 4th. You need your best team in April 15th. So I like to keep some powder dry. We're probably going to keep our biannual, keep our trade exception alive through the year. And then if we take an injury or something's not working, we can make a move.
I'm glad you said that because it does seem like a lot of teams try to finish their team in July, August, and September. And especially if you have a good team, and we've seen it the last couple of years, January, February, these minimum buyout guys are available. And if you're a good team, you have an amazing chance of getting them.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of times teams, they want to finish July 4th and then off to the Cape or Jersey Shore or San Diego. So who knows? But I do think it's definitely smart to stay flexible. I think what happens to teams, especially if they get 2 stars, or I hope someday maybe we'll have a third guy to add. They get locked in, because they have their picks encumbered through 2080, no seconds, and so we have all our first 19 going forward, most of our seconds, and a bunch of international players that we think could help. So staying flexible and be good. That's sort of our theme.
Sergio Lowe, what is he, like 45 now?
MVP,
best guy
MVP
in Europe?
of the EuroLeague.
Yeah.
You know, it turns out like
I think he's my age now.
I think I want to play in Madrid because Madrid must be awesome.
It must be incredible.
He's turned down some deals I cannot believe, and
the deals you offered him.
We pretty much talk every year. We flirt with each other every year, and I actually do think he's going to play for us. It may be on the back end, but he's maybe one of the best guards ever in Europe. So
if he came in right now, is he immediately like a third guard?
If he came in now, he would be
an impact guy for you,
at least a quality rotation player in the NBA, if not better.
Well, maybe your owner needs to start stepping it up a little bit. Maybe he needs to fly out there to Madrid and take the guy out to dinner.
Coach McHale and I did that, and I thought that was year we're going to get him. It's not an ownership thing, unless we only have the tools we have. Unless you're Prokhorov, you don't have any way to do some other.
Wait,
things.
So his life is so great in Madrid that you now have this team that has a chance to win the NBA title potentially. He could come over here. He could make, I'm guessing, as much money as he makes there and try to play on, in the best league on one of the best teams. And that's just not attractive?
It's attractive, but I think I'm just telling you, Madrid must be awesome. And he wins MVPs.
He must be single.
And titles. I think he's just about to get married, I think he's getting married soon.
You should every week. You should email him. Hey, it's Daryl. How are you?
I think I tweet at him. I pine for him on Twitter. So,
you've hit almost rock bottom twice as a GM, and both times rallied out of it in an amazing way. The first time, you stockpiled all those picks that year. The year you ended up getting James Harden. You were so ready to make a move. All these things. You're trying to trade with everybody. Nothing's happening. You go through the summer of 2012, and you just end up with these 3 picks. They were like 12, 16, and 18. None of them were impact guys. And now you're looking at this going, crap, what am I going to do? And then the James Harden trade falls.
Royce White.
Royce White, who barely played.
MVP
Jeremy
of Canada,
Lamb.
MVP of Canada.
Jeremy Lamb, Terrence Jones.
Yep.
And you have all these small pieces. You can't turn them into anything. You have all these you have the attractive, what was the pick you traded for Kyle Lowry?
It was inverse protected Toronto pick.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have that. You have some expirings. The Chris Paul trade falls through. You were going to get Gasol in that trade, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That falls through.
Correct.
Now you got nothing. James Harden comes in. Now all of a sudden, you're a genius again. Then last year, terrible Harden Howard, bad chemistry. Everybody's like, oh my God, this is it. Rebound, D'Antoni comes in. Now you got Chris Paul and James Harden in the same thing.
Eric Gordon, had a big part of that.
Big thing. Yeah, good times. How worried were you? What time were you more worried, the first time or the second time?
I would say you missed one rock bottom, which was in 2009, where I thought we had maybe our title team, and we had our test, Tracy, prime, Shane.
That was a competitive
Lowry.
rock bottom, though.
Yeah, well then, through the season we lost McGrady, we lost Yao in the playoffs, and we still took the Lakers to 7, who went on to win the title. But that was when we pretty much thought Yao Ming might be done. We knew Tracy McGrady was probably done, and we don't do the rebuilding thing. Our worst, both rock bottoms you mentioned that we've been at have been 41 at least win seasons. But in many ways, as that can be worse, right? Because you're not, you don't have a high pick coming, so it's almost
for you. It's the worst. You're in no man's land.
Oh, I know.
You're going crazy.
It's actually all my analytics friends during that period were just killing me because they're like, "What's the worst lottery pick to have?" 14, and we got it like 4 straight years.
Right.
I was losing my nerd cred, man. It was it was tough. Yeah. But we had to fight through it. And I would say 2 years ago might have been worse, where we thought we just made the Western Conference Finals, and then we only won half our games. the next year. I think that was definitely worse. And from our owner, Leslie Alexander, to me, to, the James Harden, to everyone, we were like, that shit's not happening again. We're going to pull out of this. And we took some heat even for signing Ryan, signing Eric Gordon, obviously adding Coach D'Antoni. I think most people thought that was a mistake. Our owner was instrumental in that. He always was excited how Mike's teams played. And he really, really wanted to look at him hard, and actually got mad at me that I didn't sign him immediately.
Right, I remember that.
But I was doing my diligence. Mike's still mad at me for this, but I was doing my diligence. We were sort of looking either at Mike or maybe more of a Brad Stevens type profile, a young up-and-comer, and I was doing my diligence on the latter. We knew Mike was the guy we wanted if we went veteran. And, it's really, it's been exciting. And we wanted to get back to being a destination in free agency. That year really hurt us for the premier free agent who happens to be on the best team in the league now. Because I think if either this year or the 2 years ago happened, we have a real shot at him coming to Houston. But, our timing was off.
Al Horford?
Hey, these are things I can't say, but you can say. Okay. So, but, we really... and the plan really worked. We got ourselves back to contention, and that obviously led, ultimately to having a great season, and then Chris Paul coming here.
Did you start to worry at some point, like some of the stuff you were doing, 06, 07, 08, which was a great time to be a GM, especially if you were using advanced metrics and not a lot of other people were.
It was a great time.
And as the league starts to evolve, now everybody's looking at the same data you're looking at, and everybody's trying to steal little tricks that you and some other teams were doing. And then by 2013-14, there weren't a lot of old school teams anymore. Everybody was new school. Did you worry this happened to Billy Beane a little bit in baseball, right?
Yeah.
Where he had an advantage, and then all of a sudden it wasn't an advantage anymore.
It's a real problem. I mentioned this in the Michael Lewis piece, that our draft, it happened again this year. It was very frustrating because we were picking in the 40s.
Yeah.
I would say almost always in the 40s. We end up with a guy like 23 to 26 on our board, and we go like, that's not bad. Like, that's a late first quality, which can be good. I mean, this year again, man, it was like straight down our board. And I'm not saying our board is great, but it's like we obviously have a lot of pride in it. We've, I think by our analysis, we're like the fourth best drafting team over the last 11 years. But yeah, the draft's more efficient. Free agency, you even see it here. Teams are being smarter about doing shorter deals and things like that. That's sort of frozen up the market relative to the past. Teams tanking is really smart. I mean, like we've never done it, but if you're going to be out of it and you can't compete with Golden State, you should be looking hard at what Philly did, because they're sitting there with like multiple first round picks, so I think teams are just they may not go extreme hinky, but they're being smarter about how they use their cap space. And it's harder, but hey,
it was funny knowing you during the Philly process thing, because Hinkie was your dude.
I was like the only guy defending him.
You loved it, but you had always said this to me, that this was, if you had no hope, this was the strategy, is just to go completely hopeless. Yeah, and try to lose for 3 straight years and stockpile lottery picks.
I mean, the Houston Astros are benefiting now. Jeff Luhnow did an amazing job with that, and I wish
the Cubs did it too.
Cubs did it. Theo's obviously one of the best out there. When we hit that rock bottom after we lost Yao Ming and Tracy, had a conversation with our owner, really showed him like the two paths, and the Philly path is more reliable. Like you can get a high pick by just sucking, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why people hate it, because it's simple. Like, everyone can suck. There's 1,000 ways to be terrible, and Jeff Van Gundy makes the best points on that. But it is more reliable way to get back into contention. But there is the other path, which is the one we took, which is, you have to just be very careful on your contracts, make sure everything is set up so that those players who are helping you have future options, you stockpile picks, and then you got to pounce with a trade. But, you can wait a long time for a team to, trade a guy like James Harden. That could take very long, whereas if you go the tank route, you might be 3 or 4 years and you're already a couple high picks into the whole thing, and it's much more reliable and probably quicker.
Well, you need some luck too. I mean,
All of it.
Honestly, could have just ended up with Pau Gasol, and then Harden comes on the board, and you don't have a chance to get him.
People say that, but like Pau, if we had gotten him,
Pau was really good.
Well, he was very good, and I still think we could have done the James trade. People say we couldn't, and obviously I can't know what's in Sam Presti's head, so maybe it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, we were, it was going to be basically Scola and Kevin Martin for Pau Gasol, and we would have still had the same other pieces in the trade except Kevin Martin. And we could have, if we wanted to piece that trade together, we could have always have traded Powell for Kevin Martin and really pieced it together that way.
Yeah, interesting.
So I don't think that couldn't have happened, but yeah, you need a. They're still only letting one team win out of 30, so you need a lot of luck. Either your picks that are high have to pan out, or you have to be able to pounce when a trade comes at some point, because you're generally not signing a star. It's really rare. We've happened to do it twice with Dwight and now Chris. Chris was a trade, but it was sort of one of those ones that, because he could leave, was like Lou and LeBron and Bosh went to Miami. Those were technically trades, but obviously they were free agency. So
when did you feel like big guys started to become less impactful as I cannot contend unless I have a star center?
I would say my thinking's evolved there in the last maybe 3 years. Because I love big guys.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm not tall. Obviously, I wasn't a pro player. I was a pretty good high school player, but I played inside at 6'4" because I was at a pathetic small high school in Ohio. So at 6'4", I was actually moderately big. I played it. So, every GM has their soft spot for players. I have a soft spot for big guys who play tough. Like PJ Tucker. I got a soft spot for a guy like that who's big, bang, Chuck Hayes, even Dwight Howard. I love guys who play big, strong, and tough. And it's been tough for me to realize that role is fading. And really the modern NBA center is a guy like Clint Capella, mobile, fast,
screen
rim
rollers.
Protector, screen roller, lob dunker. That really is the modern five, and so everyone else has got to be able to shoot and defend.
If that's true, then how does Nerlens only go for like 30 cents on the dollar at the trade deadline last year?
Yeah, he's about to be a free agent, and
but there's 5 versions of him in the entire league, probably.
Maybe a few more than that. I mean, 8? I think everyone keeps getting pushed to the 5, so a lot of the athletic 4s are now 5s. So I think there's more. I'd have to count and look. But
so do you think like somebody like Jonathan Isaac could eventually be a stretch 5 with the way teams are playing basketball now?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Yeah.
He was the most intriguing. Are you allowed to talk to about other prospects or no? Because I thought like he was the most intriguing of the top 6 for like just. I don't know what position he is, but where basketball is going, he might be a center. I don't know.
I'll just talk generally about it because we talked a lot about actually shooting 5s.
Yeah.
Like that's like if you a rim protecting, rebounding guy who can shoot 3s, that's going to be there's a few unicorns like that in the league now. That's going to be the super unique asset that like maybe no one will have.
That's why I was losing my mind when it seemed like your friend Phil Jackson for 2 seconds might actually trade Porzingis, because I was like, there's 3 guys in the league like this. 2 of them are on the Warriors. And now here's Porzingis, a rim protector.
I think Philly has one too, I think, potentially.
Yeah, if he can stay in the court.
Yeah.
A rim protector who can shoot 3s on the other end is like, that's the hardest thing to find. And you've struck oil if you have that. You cannot trade Porzingis.
Yeah,
so I think they wisened up.
Yeah, I think it's a very unique skill, but you're gonna see it because like literally you go to the playground.
Yeah,
every single kid is shooting 3s. They're all messing up their shot for later because they're trying to hoist NBA 3s at age 6 or whatever. Right. And that's why but. All the bigs are handling the ball. All the bigs are face up. All the bigs are trying to shoot 3s. So there's gonna be a bumper crop coming. I don't know when, but it's coming.
Yeah, I wonder. Like, so you think like the guys that we grew up with, like Brad Doherty.
Love Brad.
One of your favorites. Your team was the Cavs growing up. A lot of people don't know that, but like Brad Doherty now, Time Machine Brad Doherty is shooting 3s from like age 10.
For sure, right?
And
yeah.
I don't know if he even has a jump hook.
No, I have a jump hook. That's like no one has a jump hook.
Right.
I love my jump hook.
Out.
Like in my old man game where I'm terrible. I'm like that's like we like Modi Yunus had a jump hook. He was like everyone was like, wow,
oh, jump hook.
Has a jump
Look
hook.
at that thing.
Both hands, left and right. So
but like Brad Daugherty, he's not developing his game like that. Ewing, I think, had to have been a center no matter what, because just the size and athleticism of him. I can't imagine him shooting.
I don't know. I mean,
who knows though?
All the Memphis center shooting threes. I mean, like,
Hold on, we gotta take a quick break. Talk about our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans.
Sounds great.
Remember Dan Gilbert, Cavs owner. They understand that home plays a big role in your life and family. That's why they created Rocket Mortgage, which gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple and allows you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you, whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th. With Rocket Mortgage, you get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision, like how Daryl Morey loves to make informed decisions.
I'm looking at a condo. Can they help me with a condo mortgage?
You should ask them. Their trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. Get a real mortgage approval in minutes. Adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure you're getting the right solution for you. That's Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Bill Simmons, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
If I use them, will Dan get more money to use on the Cavs?
That I don't know the answer to that. Maybe.
Have to be careful.
He's already spending. He doesn't need more money.
That's
he's spending on everybody.
Yeah,
he just paid Kyle Korver. And
he's going to be paying all his other owners a lot in luxury tax. So.
Wait, I have to ask you a couple of things here that I cannot get answers for. One, 2016, the big cap spending spree of 2016. The cap's up. Oh my God, everybody has so much money to spend. This is amazing. The cap's going to keep going up and up. Here, everybody, take some money. And now this year, the cap went backwards. So you're looking at this. I understand the reasons why the cap jumped last year. It went up like, what, right. 25 TV million deal, or 21 million, new media rights, all that stuff. Goes up to 100 million? 100?
Yeah, I think, 100. And then.
So then they thought this year it was going to go to like 109, 110,
right?
Which was part of when everybody's spending money last year. They're thinking, well, it's going to go up another 10 this year. It goes backwards. And now you have all these teams that are screwed, and it's kind of chaos. Why didn't people know this was going to happen last year? What were the dynamics?
Well, the NBA guidance was up. Like, NBA guidance was it was going to go up, I think, 9 million originally. So teams were sort of relying on that. And then.
So the NBA was just wrong?
Well, some of it's very hard for the NBA to forecast. Look, for example, Cleveland and Golden State mowing through the playoffs. Golden State bangs out like 7 to 10 million per playoff game.
So the fact that we lost like probably 8 to 10 playoff games.
It hurt, yeah.
It knocked the cap down like 4 or 5 million.
It was a big factor in the cap going down. So
well, I know Mike Zarin on the Celtics was calculating every game that was lost. He was having a stroke. We lost another 400,000.
Mike was so threading the needle on their cap space. Like, we were talking about one trade where they get one pick. Like, I forget, one that was like 15 to 17 or whatever. And then I was like, would you do the deal if I get you the 18th pick? He was like, no, that'll mess up my cap by 50 grand. So
right.
I was like, man, Mike, you're on top of this. So
Jesus.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing was they made that pension deal with the ex-players, right? With the retired players. And I think some of that knocked down the cap too, because the players
I'm not totally
and the owner.
With that, but
I think that knocked it down by a couple million.
Yeah,
but now all of a sudden we're at 99, and
that was a good thing, though. I mean,
that's a great thing.
I talked to a lot of the retired NBA players, and these guys built the league, and more money should have been coming to them.
Well, you had Moses died in Houston, what, 6 months ago?
About a year ago.
Yeah,
around
about a year
this time. Very sad, tragically, like right after an event. So.
No, the pension thing is fantastic. I just don't think that. I guess I'm surprised this league that is so centered around competitiveness, looking for an edge, and yet now you have this crucial spending spree moment, and the budgets are just like kind of arbitrary. It's like, no, now you got 99 instead, and it's like these teams that are planning for 5 years, and there's $10 million less than that they're playing with. Seems like a weird way to do business.
Yeah, well, I think everyone was trying to work out a different ssolution to that, but just couldn't. To be fair to the league and everybody.
I'm not criticizing the league. It just seems like
it did create, and it hurt because players now compare salaries.
Yeah,
and they don't understand how, this guy's getting this and that guy's getting that, and you have to just explain it was just random. They were free agent at this year instead of that year, and it's not just the cap jump. It's like randomly, are you a year where there's a lot of point guards? If you're a point guard, then you end up getting less, or randomly a year when there's either a scarcity or of wings. Like it's there's no the rationality of like who gets what in free agency is it's tough for agents and players because it's just like almost random at times, and it gets everyone frustrated, and I have to deal with the repercussions, which is like everyone like we like one of the players who just went to Philly got like 23 million, and Chris Paul was like, I'm making 24 million.
Right.
And so you get like random stuff like that where they just don't, it's just hard for them to process, so.
Yeah, it's almost like a video game.
Yeah, the reality is not good. And
so do you think
part of the reason we had our strategy last year getting Ryan and Eric on good deals for the team, obviously took us to 55 wins, was in that market last year, we were like, let's get the premier guys quick, pay a little more, because we thought that the next tier down was going to be people paying like 10 to 15 million.
And that's when you get in trouble.
For guys that should be making 3 to 5 at best. So,
well, it does seem like we're headed toward a reckoning next week where there's going to be too many free agents left and not enough money.
A lot of agents fired. I mean, I've heard players getting like 30 million wanting to fire their agents and stuff like that. I mean, like that's insane, right? But it is actually crazy. Like one of the big moments in my career early on where I was like, welcome to the job moment. I think it was maybe 2 years in, was when I offered it was, I think at the time, a $137 million max deal to Chris Bosh. And it was like he was going to go line his birdcage with the paper. And I was like, you or I would be shaking if someone's like sliding you a $137 million deal. And for him, obviously he had many teams courting him. So it was just yet another 137 million. Like it was amazing. It was very eye opening.
Yeah. But I remember talking to you. I was having lunch in East LA with my dad, and I ended up talking to you, and it was during the 90-minute window when you thought you had Chris Bosh. And you were out of your mind. You were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna win the title next year. I'm gonna have James Harden, Chris Bosh, and Dwight Howard. Nobody is going to be able to match up with us." I
mean, obviously, if that team had been healthy all year, I think we would have maybe had the best team in the league.
That was heading into 14-15, right?
Yeah, I think so.
See, 14-15.
Yeah.
That's like one of the great what-if titles.
Super team.
Yeah, the Warriors were like, they were good, but they were still, they hadn't really gone through the 4 rounds of playoff intensity.
Spurs were great. Obviously, Miami was still great. So, well, we would have obviously
you would have been in there.
Injured Miami. Yeah.
That was the lost. I mean, really, the Clippers, that's when you look at the what ifs for the Clippers and the Josh Smith, Corey Brewer game, which is that the greatest sports moment of your life?
Yeah, I for me, no, there's no doubt. And I was so.
Were you at that game?
I was technically at the game.
You were just a puddle?
I was catatonic. I was like, I mean, because James had been, he was on the bench because he was, Kevin was going to bring him back in, but the group was rolling, so he rolled.
Yeah, I remember.
And so honestly, this was a great moment for Coach McHale because. I'm like in my head, like, what are we doing? Put James Harden back in the game. Like, and I would be the worst coach ever. I'd be like, Tom, just screaming at everyone. I'd be insane on the sidelines. No one would like me.
Right.
And so, I appreciated Coach McHale at that moment. He pushed all the right buttons. And Corey Brewer, Josh Smith, Terrence Jones hit a 3 in that stretch. I think we had collective career 29% shooters make about 7 threes.
Heat check, yeah.
It was like And
then the Clippers missed 14 straight shots.
And it wasn't that we came back from 17 down. We then went up by like 9 with like 4 minutes, 2 minutes to go or something. Like it was the.
You're never going to talk about that game with Chris Paul, I'm guessing.
We haven't talked about it.
Yeah, probably don't bring that one up.
Yeah, that wasn't part of the recruiting
Chris,
pitch. Yeah, that wasn't part of the recruiting pitch. Actually, now you say it, I'm like, I actually would enjoy getting his perspective of that whole thing because it was just a weird. I've been through a lot of tough times in my career, and everyone's who's rooted for a team their whole life, whether it was the Cavaliers when I was growing up or the Indians or Browns, especially, you have those moments where like just the train wreck's coming and it happened to the other team for me once, and like it was weird for me because like I haven't had the other team be the one who's driving themselves off a cliff. So
it was, I've been to an amazing number of basketball games in my life. And that was the weirdest game I've ever been to, ever. I've never been to a game
right there.
I've never seen a game like that in my life because I remember, and I was also thinking for you, just as your friend, like, Harden comes out, he was terrible, and his body language on the bench, and I'm thinking like, this is bad. This is going to be a bad loss for them, and he's going to have to figure out, what do I do this summer? And it looked like you were going to lose by 30. Yeah. And then you started coming back without Harden. And he wasn't engaged initially, and then he got into it, and you could kind of feel it. And at the same time, the Clippers, they had no bench that year. They had played that tough Spurs series. They had 6 tough games against you, and they just died. And it was like Blake died. It wasn't. I don't know if it was a choke or if it was dead legs, but it was. You could literally see them run out of gas. And your guys are playing with so much energy, and the crowd was like catatonic.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like, but you might as well not have had people there. It was like in an empty gym.
The thing that struck me that only you could know, or if you're in LA, was how much the town hates the Clippers. It was like, I had friends at the Dodgers game, and when we were in Houston in Game 7.
Yeah.
And I guess they told me, I don't know if this is true, that when it was announced at the Dodger game that we had beaten them in Game 7, the crowd cheered. Like, that's tough, man. Like, I mean,
it's a really weird dynamic, and that was one of the reasons I wrote a column about blowing up the Clippers on Friday. That
was a great column.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, they ended up.
I love you're back to writing, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean,
but one of the reasons was that they had this 5-month window of. Sorry, my friend Jacoby keeps calling me.
You're a popular guy. Man.
They had this 5-year window where the Lakers are a train wreck, and they have Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre in Lob City, and it's like the Laker blood just runs so deep here, and the Laker fans hate the Clippers, and you feel it like at little moments at that Dodgers game where it's like the Clippers are supposed to be an LA team, and yet they have this small group of fans that love them.
They do have diehard fans. I've met a lot of them.
And then a ton of Laker fans.
Daryl, man.
Clipper Daryl. And those people come in whether they suck or not. So I get why he had to do the Blake thing. Like, I think it's really tough to rebuild. You can do it if you're in Philly. You can do it if you're in Oklahoma City. I don't know if you can do it here when there's 10 other teams.
It's a big reason why in Houston we never would choose. I think just the
because you have the
there's
Astros
the competitiveness
and the
of our owner.
Yeah,
there's the competitiveness of me, James Harden. Well, we didn't have James at the time, but we also had a great group of veterans, so it would have been hard to go the tank route anyway. But we also felt like Houston is a town where obviously they're coming back to the Stros now, which is great. But like for a while, the Stros were like barely like that. You could get 500 people there. It felt like. I'm happy they're really turning around. I think they're the best team in baseball. But we felt like if we ever went through that in Houston, it would just, you might lose a whole generation of fans if you're bad for 3-4 years. So, we felt like we went the right way.
I have some slight issues with your fans, but I'm not going to make you uncomfortable.
What?
I think the home court advantage could be a little better.
Well, you're from Boston, so
I know. I'm used to a certain level of. I have a certain level of expectations for a home crowd performance.
I mean, if you're at
I know
game
you're going to get defensive. That's why I didn't bring it up.
Yeah, you're right. If you're at Game 7 against the Clippers, you would have seen our fans come out, and we have great fans, but You've been in some of the all-time great fan cities in your life, so.
Well, definitely the cold weather cities, it means more.
Well, yeah, you got nothing to do.
You got nothing to do. It's cold. It's cold all the time.
I lived in Boston for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be going to an arena. You don't want to be freezing your ass off outside.
Last thing, and then we're going to go and we're going to tape some for the Ringer NBA show too that people can listen to if they want more Daryl. Last thing though, the calendar. I wanted to get your take on the calendar for the NBA because I have some real issues with it. I've been bitching about it forever.
I've heard Adam Silver just loves getting notes from you.
Yeah, no, I don't know if he does. This is crazy. This is like one of the best 4-day stretches you can have for the league. And the free agent signings, all this stuff starts leaking on June 30th on a Friday. Everyone I know has Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, July 4th, Tuesday, Wednesday, basically either 5 days off or 10 days off or whatever. And yet this is the biggest time for the NBA. And it just seems crazy to me that they don't move everything into June so that it's more eventful. So here's my idea. I would cut down to 76 games, which I know you agree with. Get rid of 6 back-to-backs.
I would cut more, but
well,
I get that that's
I would love
hard.
to get to 70, but 76. So
I think we'd all make more money too. So
you start the playoffs, Masters weekend, like April 7th. You rip through it and you're done like at the latest June 10th. Draft is June 17th.
I would have a shorter playoff series, which would help as well.
I have an idea for that for you in a second. Draft like June 17th range. Free agency like June 25th. Everybody's locked in. Everybody's still around. Everybody like traffic. Like we had like the 2 best traffic months we've had at the Ringer, partly because of the NBA. And now it gets to July and it's like people who don't, or places that don't even have cell phone reception or wireless and things like that. But why do they do it this way? Has anybody ever looked at each other and said, this is stupid?
No,
we're running one of our biggest weeks on July 4th.
They talk about the schedule a lot. I would say as with everything, it's an accident of history, right? I mean, that's why we have 82 games. Like, that's why I think it's funny.
It was decided in like 1969.
Yeah, people are like, 82 games, it's got to be 82. Like, if they had randomly decided 64, we'd still be playing 64 games. Like
it's so stupid.
And people are like, no, 82 is perfect. That's why I like tweeted out like 7-minute abs. I got 6-minute abs. What about 5 minutes? No, not 5. It's got to be like everyone thinks the number's magic. There's no chance that in 1950 whatever, like someone decided 82 games and that was the perfect number. Like, so, I really think we should think thoughtfully about, how many games we play. The great thing about Commissioner Silver is I know, and he's working with the Players Union, we're going to have a shorter preseason. That's going
to be awesome.
It's a great change. We need like 2 preseason games at most.
You're not sold on preseason and preseason practices. No. It's not like we're putting in football.
No, like
football
it's not
systems here.
Like a lot of teams are running very similar things. Obviously there's better and worse coaches, but like we don't need a month to learn the NBA playbook when any diehard fan knows every team's playbook basically, after watching 3 games basically.
Yeah.
So
they're going to run a high screen?
Yeah, no, yeah.
They're
going to run elbow action. Oh, this is
shooter
new.
in the corner. Yeah. I haven't seen this yet.
So, high splits, that's never seen that, but, so yeah, we can do that shorter, spread this, then, shorten the schedule, spread the season out more. I hadn't thought of, you think more about the entertainment side of the business. I just think about winning.
Yeah.
So you make a good point. Like, if the big, hot stove portion of the league could happen in June, there isn't a whole lot going on.
We could see
sports.
it like when the Markelle Fultz trade happened. And that was like just prime, everybody's locked in. And that was like this 3-day event. I mean, I felt like I had to do a podcast on.
No, our trade with the
Sunday
Clippers was like a 2 or 3 day little.
Although Stephen A was on vacation. So it wasn't, the whole media wasn't totally locked in. All right, a couple more ideas. 5-game first round series, but the 2 top seeds in each
conference.
conference.
Can't do that. We got 7, so can't switch to 5, Bill. 7 is sacred, even though we just switched.
I know, but listen to me though.
I'm kidding, I'm joking.
No, I know. 5-game series, but the top 2 seeds in each conference get 4 of the 5 home games.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just to make the regular season matter more.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Hey,
like
if you 7-8 seed, you want to come in and beat them? Yeah, you want to come in and beat them? You got to beat them.
Exactly.
Got to take some home games off their court.
Your play-in tournament is awesome. You could do that over 2-3 days.
That one, I think, just out of pure spite to me, they don't want to do.
That's actually been brought up and talked about. I mean, I mean, never got past any serious point, but I joke about it all the time, but it's true. Like, teams have to take a lot of risks because only one team wins. Yeah. And Europe has this great model where there are these, if you don't win the Champions Cup, you can win the Kings Cup, or you can win, the EuroLeague. You can win, like, there's different things you can win. Yeah. And that's good. Like, so even like having like a little tournament before the playoffs or a mid-season, little cup among the top teams, something, because it's just darn depressing that like literally one team is happy at the end. That's why the NCAA is brilliant. Final Four, like, people talk like, oh, you made the Final Four, that's good. They don't talk about, it's great to win the title, but you make the Final Four, that's cool.
I think more randomness in the earlier rounds is,
you have to,
because like
I would be one and done. People think I'm crazy. Like, I just think,
well, somebody said like 71 out of, I think it was in the last 18 playoffs, 71 of the last 72 seeds were top 4. Oh, that made the final 4.
Yeah,
like basically, if you're seed 5, 6, 7, 8, you have no chance to make round 3.
Take our game, the NBA, which is an awesome, unbelievable game. I think the best pro game, and the better teams beat the worst teams at a higher rate than any other sport already. Yeah. Baseball, football, soccer, doesn't matter. Hockey. The better teams beat the bad teams on a one-game basis more than any other sport. We or the Spurs or Golden State beat the bad teams like 85, 95% in one game. So, and then we play 7 times. Like, right. We should be the sport that plays once. And the other, like baseball playing 7, that makes sense because like it's more random. Like, they should play 7-game series. We should just play one game and just see who wins. And the TV attention to a Golden State first round game playing whoever would be huge, because like you can win one game. They have a chance. Everyone knows Golden State's going to beat whoever they play the 8 seed or hopefully the 7 seed next year. They're going to beat them in a 7.
I remember the Rex Chapman Suns.
Oh yeah.
So they played the Sonics that year with GP.
Yep.
And 5-game series. Yeah. I remember House and I made a big bet on the Suns because they were great odds. Thought they had a chance.
Sean Kemp
and it's like the great thing about those series is if you were up 2-1, you had game 4 at home. Yeah, and you had a real chance to.
You had a real chance.
Nowadays, if you're up 2-1, the other team's still going to win.
Yeah, I think didn't Memphis get up 2-1 on Golden State like 2 years ago?
Well, but Indy went up 2-1 on Miami those 2 straight years.
Bulls were up 2-0 on Boston this year. Right?
Yeah,
everyone knows that it's gonna even out. Like, I mean, we have to have shorter playoff series. Like it.
So would you do 1 round or 2 rounds for shorter?
I would do
5-game for everything?
I would be NCAA tournament. Like,
you would?
I would. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, but we do it in football. That's right. Like, no one thinks it's crazy in football. And the attention and the TV money for one and done, like every game would be appointment viewing.
Yeah.
The NCAA in 63 games like makes so much money for the NCAA tournament relative to what we make in like our 1,250 regular season games and however many playoff games. I don't have it in my head. Well, fewer this year, but like it would generate so much TV money that we'd all benefit. Now, it's a big gamble because it's such a shift from where we're at. That's why I don't think it'll happen. That's why I don't think it'll happen. It's too real. Like, the NBA is so good the way it is. Like, we'd almost need to go through a crisis like hockey did to get some of these changes, and we'd have to make you the grand poobah commissioner of all sport or something.
Well, the first 2 rounds need to be fixed. Yeah. They're not competitive enough. We don't have upsets, and they're too predictable, and it's not. Yeah. Anyway, all right. If you want to hear more with Daryl, we're gonna take it to the Ringer NBA show. Thank you. Congrats on Chris Paul.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I know we couldn't talk too much about how the Chris Paul thing happened.
We can talk. Clippers called us about the trade, and we did it.
That's the story?
That's how it happened.
Okay, this is great. Yeah, because you weren't allowed to talk to him until July 1st.
We are not allowed to talk.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Daryl. We'll talk to you in the Ringer NBA show. We're going to take a quick break to talk about the CreditWise app with a message brought to you by Capital One. An athlete stays in shape by thinking about key factors that influence their game: eating well, practice, training, exercise. Well, it's the same thing if you're trying to keep your credit health in shape, right? There are key factors you have to keep an eye on, and the CreditWise app helps you track all of them. Do you pay your bills on time? How many accounts do you have? How long have your accounts been open? When you keep these key factors in check, you can keep your credit strong and healthy. CreditWise also lets you check your TransUnion credit report anytime you want for signs of error, theft, or fraud. If something looks wrong, the app will tell you what to do next. CreditWise will also send you automatic email alerts when your credit report changes. The best part, it's free for everyone, whether you're a Capital One customer or not. So download the free CreditWise app today and keep your credit strong. Okay, right now we have an interview that I did last week with Jimmy Iovine. He is one of the stars of the Defiant Ones, which is, Daryl, you've heard about the Defiant Ones?
Heard about it, but I've been pretty busy, so I haven't seen it yet.
4-part documentary that's going to be on HBO next week. And I think it's available on demand now. And it is about the partnership between Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. And it's basically tells the story of the last 40 years of music.
I've seen the promos and that looks awesome.
I got to say, I have a very, very high sniff test for docs, obviously, because I've been involved in a lot of them.
Since you started them at ESPN?
Yeah. I thought this was extraordinary. I really think this is, if you like music at all, you have to watch this. It's really good. It's exceptionally well done. Alan Hughes directed it. It's one of my favorite documentaries that I have seen. And when I did this interview with Jimmy, I had not seen the documentary yet. So unfortunately, we had to kind of talk around that part. But this is a great interview, and he's an amazing guy. So here it is, Jimmy Iovine. All right, we're taping this. It's the end of June, but we're going to run it a little closer to the documentary.
Great.
Great. Jimmy Iovine is here. HBO is going to, I think, July 9th.
Yeah, July 9th.
A massive documentary project called The Defiant Ones.
Yeah, it's on my relationship with Dr. Dre and sort of how these two guys from, different neighborhoods stay together in some really difficult times and built a business and it's kind of, it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of good lessons in there, I think. At least I got some lessons out of it.
You're from Brooklyn?
Yep.
He was from?
Compton.
Yeah, Compton. I wanted to make sure I got that right. I had to
I'm from
take
Red
a
Hook,
break.
Brooklyn. He's from Compton.
Yeah.
And we lived in two, in certain ways, racially charged neighborhoods, and went about our lives. And then we met up in 1990 and it just clicked. And he was a special guy and we went through a lot and, the whole death row thing and a lot of ups and a lot of really downs. And we stayed together and then we created Beats and now we're at Apple.
What was the biggest down at death row?
Oh, Tupac. Absolutely. That's number 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. The movie's out. Are you going to see it?
Yeah, no, I'm going to see it. No, I've not seen it, but I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. No.
I didn't know where to start with you because there's too many places to go, but I knew I was going to end up at death row at some point. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
John McEnroe, ironically, we taped a podcast with him right before you showed up and he was saying, ask him about this time. And he mentioned who was the rapper he mentioned, Tommy? Begin with a G. It was a one-hit wonder. And it was like an early rap, like mid-'80s. And McEnroe was like, I don't know about this. And you were like, no, there's something here with rap. I don't know. And you were kind of selling him on it. And he was like, I've always remembered that. He was really early.
We had a lot of conversations about hip hop in the early days. Johnny's a great guitar player, and at least he liked me. He would like me to hear me say that. But he loves to play the guitar and he loves music. He loves Springsteen and all that. So when hip hop was coming around, he was not on board yet.
How did you get on board? Because your background was totally different.
It's very simple. I came out of Rattle and Hum with U2, and we went. I started Interscope, and right at Interscope was simple. One of the first things we did. I met John McClane came in and introduced me to Dre and Suge, and they played me The Chronic. And I didn't know a lot about hip hop, but I knew whoever this was a great record producer, and I wanted to be involved with that person. And so we started working together, And the first 5 years of Interscope and Death Row were really enormously successable, but enormously complex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To say the least.
All right. So the Chronic, like how involved, what notes are you giving? You're like, hey, maybe take a little easy on Eazy-E here.
No, man.
Maybe scale it back a tiny bit.
No. When I get involved with somebody who's really talented, I just give them the keys and let them drive. I got nothing to do with it.
Those are my favorite bosses.
Yeah, well, you got to. People do that. You got to. I mean, if you really know what talent is, if you know the difference, some people need help.
Yeah.
But some people really don't. As a matter of fact, it works against it the minute you open your mouth. And he's one of those guys.
Do you remember when he was telling you about Snoop and this guy needs to be on the album? And
No. He brought me the album completely finished.
Oh.
Absolutely. They put the needle down and went the Chronic. And it was just incredible. I never heard anything like it. I didn't understand really hip hop that much, but as I'm listening to the words and I'm listening to what's going on, and it was in 91 or whatever it was, and what was going on in LA.
Yeah.
I said, holy shit, these guys got it. These guys are nailing what's going on right now. And whenever you can get involved with something like that poetic and that intense, I was lucky to be involved.
So what's interesting about that, and you were living in LA at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you got into music in the 70s or early 70s, but all through, and the music was kind of, it was capturing so many things that were going on. Young people, America, Vietnam, all these different things. And then you have hip hop in the 90s, the same thing. It's a lot of it's capturing what's going on.
It's captured that vibe.
I'm living in Boston. I don't know what's going on in LA. How the hell am I going to know that, cops are killing people in Compton and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, it's, they reminded me of the Stones, Snoop and Dre. They had that whole Altamont thing, that whole energy that the Stones had in the late 60s and early 70s. And I related to it like that. And that's why I knew, I said, if we can get this exposed, it's going to be massive. Getting it exposed is the hard part.
How did you get involved with Tupac?
Tupac was signed by Tom Wally at Interscope. And, Tom's office was next to mine. And again, it was, we split up the work, and Tom did a lot of the work on Tupac. And Tupac was an extraordinary person to be in business with. But when you lose someone like that on your record company or in general, if you know them, it's a massive loss. He was only 25 years old, and it's just shame. I have no idea why Tupac is dead.
Do you feel like, I think it was 5 years, all the songs that he had, and then there was other ones that weren't even released and all that. What is play out his career? What are the next 15 years of his life like if he lives? Because the amount of music he produced just in the 5 years was almost unparalleled.
Well, I can't say. I can only say hope, because he's big, and it is the word hope, because he had two sides of him, and he had a side of him that was really concerned about African-American culture and the inner city and stuff. And he was going to be a real voice. He would have hit his Marvin Gaye stage, if he hadn't hit it already. And he had a lot to say, and John Lennon, and he's like one of those. So I think anything could have happened, I mean, the music's all out, so people know what he did. But he only made that music in like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
He recorded like 200 songs or something like that, which is pretty.
He was in jail. He came out. Like he
had a ton of studio time. When he got out of jail, he went in the studio and just recorded for 3 or 4 months, 5 months, whatever it was, and recorded so much music. But that doesn't account for when he would have been older and maybe seen something, or, because he had a great way of expressing the truth.
Was your attitude, something's going to happen to this guy? I'm worried. This is going to the wrong place?
I was worried for all of them, to be honest. I was very nervous about them going to Vegas all the time, because I knew there was a lot of heat in Vegas at the time, And I was always concerned for Suge and all the guys that were going there. During that, they would go to all the fights.
Yeah.
And, but you just don't think that's possible.
The East Coast, West Coast thing. What was as a detached observer, what was as it's kept escalating?
I didn't understand it, because these are young guys that were making tons of money. They were making tens of millions of dollars a month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's this about? What's this about? And it just kept escalating. And you keep thinking that it's okay, that's going to be old. People are just going to go on and, spend some money and have a good time. But it just kept on escalating to a point of complete ignorance.
Yeah. Why do you think Dr. Dre didn't make more music?
Because he only puts out what he really loves and he doesn't like a lot. He doesn't do it. He's only put his name on 3 albums his entire career, as far as solo records. Put his name on beats. And now he's doing a television series. He's made a television series.
For Apple, right?
Yeah, he made it for himself, but it's called Vital Sign. It's really good.
What's your role as somebody when you're close to an artist like that? And I mean, I would argue that even if he's careful with what he put out, just putting out 3 albums in 25 years doesn't seem like enough music.
It's not.
So what do you do? How do you cajole them?
You block and tackle, man. You know what I mean? There was a time where it's in the documentary where, Universal told me to get rid of Dre because we were down like $15 million or something like that because he wasn't putting his music. I didn't put out Detox. And I said, yeah, but I'm going with him. If you want him to go, I'm going. And because I knew he was one of those people that come along every 25 years.
Yeah.
And I still believe it. I don't think he's anywhere near finished.
Okay. What'd you think of Straight Outta Compton?
I think he nailed it. Hey, F. Gary Gray, Cube, Dre, all the actors, they killed it. They got the language right, which is so hard to get in a movie. The script was really, really good, and the language was real. And that was important. That was very important.
Had some great moments too. I had Ice Cube on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and we were just, that movie just doesn't work unless they nail all 3 actors. And
what's that?
Unless they nail the 3, they have to nail Dre, they have to nail Cube, and they have to nail Easy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I said, I was like, well, you lucked out. You went 3 for 3. And he's like, it wasn't totally luck. Like, we weren't going to make the movie until we knew we had the 3. And a lot of movies don't make that mistake.
Dre is not afraid of making anything and not putting it out, no matter the cost, the commitment, what, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If he doesn't feel it, it could still fail. But if he doesn't feel it, it's not coming out.
All right, let's go backwards. So you get into the music industry like the 72, 73 range. Mm-hmm. But is it fair to say you were an engineer or were you more than that?
What I was I started out, in every recording studio in those days, they'd call you a general but that doesn't mean that you're the boss. It's the opposite. You do general work and you get to learn. So there's an engineer and an assistant and a producer in the room, and you get to watch them and help them.
Yeah.
And then eventually you graduate to second engineer. And so what happened was, which is actually in the documentary as well, is I used to do everything around the studio, clean it up, set it up, get microphones, So one day my boss, his name was Roy Cicala, who owned the studio, and his client was John Lennon. And they called me up on Easter Sunday, and they said, we need you to come in and answer the phone. So I'm Catholic, and I live in Brooklyn, and I'm Italian. And so I said, absolutely, because I was so insecure that I felt, I got to work harder than the next guy for me to get anywhere, for me to be useful to any of these people. They don't need me for anything.
Yeah.
So I went to my mother. I said, Mom, I'm going to go to work. She goes, no, you're not. Your suit's upstairs. Church is in an hour, and your whole family's coming over here. I said, Mom, I'm going to work. Right? So I left and I got to the studio and I walked in and John Lennon and Roy Cicala are laughing. And they said, well, our assistant engineer just left and we wanted to see how much you wanted it. So we want you to become the third piece of this thing. Mm. And it was, that was the beginning of my career, Easter Sunday, 1973.
Who's your role model at that point? You obviously want to get in the music industry. Do you even have somebody you're pointing to and saying, I want to be like that guy? No.
Well, I liked music. I liked Phil Spector's music, but I didn't want to be like him.
Right, he's a crazy person.
No, there was nothing, man. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I knew my father.
But your dad said you had like just an unbelievable ear for music like the whole time. Like there was something different about how you heard things.
I think, I turned out when I got into the studio, I was finally natural at something. And I finally wasn't afraid of something. Because what happened was when I used to play sports when I was a kid, I was the guy that was like, please don't hit it to me.
Right.
You got the uniforms on, you're out there, and you're like, okay, hit it to anybody else. And it was the opposite. Then when I got into the studio and I started doing my first mixing, like I mixed a song called Sweet Little 616 for John Lennon on the Rock and Roll album, I was like, hit the ball to me. And just what happened was, I said in the documentary, the thing that seems to be landing with young people is, at a certain point, we all have fear, and it's a gigantic headwind. But at a certain point, if you can flip it and make it a tailwind, it's got massive energy, and you can really get you through a lot. And that's what happened to me on John's album. Is when I first, in retrospect, when I first realized that feeling became something that was pushing me forward and into things rather than holding me back.
That's pretty cool. Why did young people respond to that? Young people don't respond to anything.
Because that's all they responded to. That's
great.
They think that's a mad. They said, "Wow, how'd you do that?" Because I'm frozen.
Yeah.
I'm frozen. Expectations.
Well, they're frozen because they're staring at their phone.
Well, how could you not? Well, by the way, Instagram. If I was a kid in Brooklyn and I saw all these people on Instagram having the greatest time, having the greatest girls, doing the greatest things in the greatest clothes, I'd be frozen.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can my life compare to that? So I go make up some bullshit and say, okay, let's go make my life look interesting, I mean, I don't know how people are on Frozen today. I don't know how they do it. Every kid I walk over to has anxiety and depression. I said, I understand. How could you not have anxiety and depression when everybody you see on Instagram, et cetera, is having the greatest life in the world?
Right.
That's
a good point.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, shit. So that's what they were relating to. They were relating to, how do I get this monster out from in front of me?
Did you catch John Lennon at a good time in his career?
I caught John at a very volatile time in his career. It was 73 to late 75.
Yeah, so I was going to say, he had some issues going on,
It was
right?
the long weekend. Yeah. I came to LA with him. I did 3 albums with him.
Yeah.
And it was a tough time for him. But it was also when he was going to court, trying to get thrown out. Nixon was trying to take his green card away.
Yeah.
Don't try to take his visa away. I'm not sure if he had a green card yet, but he was going to court every day and coming to the studio after that during Walls and Bridges. And I saw him every day. And that was the first time I realized, whoa, the government isn't always do the right thing. I didn't know. I was a Catholic kid from Brooklyn, grew up, and my dad was a longshoreman. We were supposed to respect the government, respect church, everything. And now all of a sudden, this guy that I know is really the truth. Richard Nixon's trying to throw him out of the country because of what he's saying. And I was like, that was the first time I started to go, oh, because I was 19. I was saying, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was like really, maybe it was late, but that's the first time it hit me.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have a president that would act irrationally like that.
Yeah, what are you gonna
Tell me
do,
more.
Man? It's
what was that like?
That was exactly right.
Let's stay away from that one.
Yeah.
So I'm a Springsteen guy. I think there's 2 people in this world. There's Springsteen guys and then everybody else.
That's right.
I don't know. I'm in my 40s, so I don't know how he resonates with like people under. Tate, do you care about Springsteen?
I mean, yeah.
Tommy?
Yeah.
Okay. I never know with these things, but Born to Run, which I would still put on the short list of the all-time great albums.
It's an incredible album.
And it just sounds like he was a maniac making it. I mean, at one point, he almost gave up on it. He was going to do it live. Like he was the ultimate torture genius. He seems like a lot more mellow now than he was in 1975.
Well, he hides it better. No,
he hides it better.
I'm kidding. I learned my work ethic from Bruce Springsteen. I grew up, thinking you had a job. Then, you finish your job. Bruce has never finished. See, John was like a Beatle. So they used to record fast.
Yeah.
The Beatles always recorded fast. That's how they made all those albums. So John's thing was like, I'm done in 10 hours, 8 hours. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bruce, is never done. So it was like the first time I realized that you just stay in a state of pain until the music's right. And I learned that from him, and it was an amazing gift. At the time, it felt really painful, but I learned my work ethic from Bruce Springsteen.
Did you ever worry that he wasn't going to release the album?
Oh, well, there's a fabulous story that I'm not sure if it made the movie or not, but what happened was we finished Born to Run. One day we were doing Born to Run, and Bruce was like, no drugs, so all we had to stay
He was
awake.
drunk on life.
He was drunk on intensity.
He was drunk in the energy.
Yeah. And so I'm there and we're mixing the album, and it's like we had 8 songs, so we had 9 days to mix them because he didn't have any money. None of us had any money, so he had to go play a gig. So we're mixing the album after all that time, and I'm like, I'm exhausted, and we're mixing She's the One, and I'm up to it's like 2 days now where maybe I fell asleep on a couch outside for a minute, but it was like, coffee and tea and everything you could possibly imagine, soda, anything with caffeine in it to stay awake. I even tried those trucking pills once, and which I hated. And so I go to look at my assistant, and I said, "What are you chewing?" He said, "It's spearmint." I said, "Give me that thing." So I took the spearmint gum, and I took the gum and I threw it in the garbage, and I chewed the aluminum foil. And I don't know if you've ever done that on a cavity.
Oh my God!
It woke me up. It was like electric shock, and I mixed the record while chewing it, and it was so painful. So we finished the album. Now I have to master it, right? And if you look at any photos of me that day, it was unbelievable. So now he's playing a gig out in I think it was Boston or something. I had to take a train. I had to take a 5-hour train ride. So I mastered the album. I get it. It's on lacquer, and I bring it out to him to play to him. So he doesn't have a record player on the road, so we go to a record store that no one knows. We don't know what the speakers sound like. We don't know anything, but we also don't know what we're doing. So we go in the record store. He hears it, and he's, I don't know. So we head back to his hotel. It was one of those motel kind of places, and his room was right outside the pool. He took the lacquer and just threw it in the pool and said,
my God,
we're doing this over again. And my friend that I took from my old neighborhood had a bunch of Valium with him, and I took it in order to get home. I just said, give me that shit. And I got on the train, and it was just, thank God for John Landau, because he saved the day, and the album finally came out.
That was always strange to me, that somebody who wrote about Bruce Springsteen ended up becoming his manager and confidant.
He really
I don't even know what the
him.
equivalent of that would be now.
I don't know.
It's pretty
but he
rare.
really understood him. He was a great producer, Landau.
Yeah.
Landau was a terrific record producer, and just had an understanding of music that intellectually Bruce really connected with, and a love for it. And he was a great resource for Bruce Springsteen.
And you did all the Springsteen albums all the way through Tunnel of Love, or when did you go off?
I did 2 albums. I did Darkness, and I did Born to Run and Darkness, because there was no space for me on their production team, so I wanted to produce records. So I went from Darkness into Patti Smith.
Gotcha.
And I did Easter with her.
But so you weren't involved at all with Springsteen after that?
Not only as friends.
Oh.
I only did those 2 albums because I was an engineer, and I started producing. I went from Patti, then I went into Tom Petty. I did Damn the Torpedoes with Tom Petty.
Right. And you were responsible for the Because the Night.
Yeah, because the night was on Darkness. It was going to be on Darkness.
I know you've told that story a million times, but I like your description of it, how it just felt like it would have resonated more if a girl sang the song.
Yeah, it's just very simple, take me, baby, here as I am. I just felt if a guy hears a woman sing these lyrics, it can't miss.
Right.
And I was right. And Bruce wasn't going to use it on his album. So I just knew it. And Patty finished the verse and just took off from that aggressive theme, you know, and she's, you know, she sings, you know, desire is hunger is the fire I breathe. Love is a banquet on which we feed, which was a kind of very similar kind of vibe where Bruce was going. And it was my first hit record as a record producer, so it changed my life.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break to talk about Miller Lite. Miller Lite is brewed to not only taste great, but also be less filling. It only has 96 calories. So it won't fill you up. It's brewed to be enjoyed from tip-off to the final buzzer. It's the original light beer and has been since they first showed up courtside in 1975. I have a special affection for Miller Lite for two reasons. One, because it's been my favorite beer since the late 1980s. Ask anyone I went to college with. And also, they made great NBA ads and did NBA posters and used a lot of the old Celtics, which was really a way to win my heart in the 1980s. I love Miller Lite. Check it out. Miller Lite. Next time you're buying beer, next time you're going to drink responsibly, go ahead, do it. Miller Lite. Back to Jimmy Iovine. Did you think in 1975 Springsteen was going to become the biggest white music star in the world?
Man,
because it happened 9 years later.
In 1975, I didn't think there was going to be 1976.
Right.
You know, I had no idea. I knew that when it came out, that it was big. And I wasn't, you know, I'd never been involved myself with something that was that big and new, something really not a lot of people knew about. So it was an incredible feeling, and the shows were so incredible.
Yeah.
I used to go record the shows as well.
Oh my God.
In the
like
truck.
4.5 hours?
All those great bootlegs out I recorded, you know, CW Post and live in Cleveland.
Oh, the Hammersmith one?
I didn't do England. I didn't go to Europe, but I did everyone in America, the Roxy, Bottom Line.
And it's just 4.5 hours every night.
No, not in those days. Those days it was 2.5 hours.
I wonder at the second concert I ever saw was Springsteen, like 1980. And he just kept doing encores, and like people, he like wore the audience out. People were ready to leave. He was like, I'm coming back again.
I got to ask that about him. I got to ask him about that recently, because my wife and I went to Italy to watch him play, and we stayed with him in Italy. And next morning, he did a 4.5 hour show. I got off and next morning we got up, we were having breakfast. I said, and we were talking about exercise. And he says, you know, I said, because he's in amazing shape. Yeah, he's in amazing shape. So I'm always talking to him about I don't have the discipline he does. I never had the discipline he does. He drives me nuts with that discipline thing because he's so incredible at it. But I said to him, why 4.5? So I said, what about this exercise? He goes, look, Jimmy, just don't do anything to hurt yourself. So I looked at him, I said, what about 4.5 hours at 67 years old? You know, he says, well, you know, I can't help that. He says, once the audience gets going,
he just loves
I'm going to take him on. You know what I mean? He goes, and we're going to go toe to toe. And he just, by the way, he doesn't even have a set list. He has a set list, but he completely throws it away.
Yeah.
And he calls the songs one after the other. I mean, if anyone has a chance to see Bruce Springsteen, they should go see it.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about like him from 71 to 75, basically, you know, when you hear some of those live, the things, because he would always tell the stories, which I always love. Like, when I was growing up, and he tells this whole things. And there's like, you can feel like he knows he has the potential and the people around him know, and you can hear the crowd screaming, and like people clearly knew in Jersey, this guy's a comet that's passing through us, and it's going to become something way more special.
What happened with Born to Run was it started to just take over everywhere, and then all of a sudden, because then
he didn't want that though, I don't think, right? Wasn't he a little afraid of massive success like that?
Well, I was afraid of the way they promoted it. With the Time and Newsweek thing freaked him out, and then he went to England and it said the future of rock and roll. They used John's quote. It was on all the posts. He actually went around and ripped them all down. You know, he was. He's an incredible person. He just is, you know, and I'll say it again. I don't have anything to do with his live tours, but if anybody has a minute, and take your kids so they get inspired like that, because that's what work looks like.
And you caught Tom Petty pretty young.
I did. Tom Petty, that was after Patti Smith. You know, he heard that album and they asked me to get involved in their record. And, you know, I was lucky. It was the same exact thing. Bruce had 2 albums, and The second one didn't do as well as the one before it, and so did Tom. So I went in on their third album. So I applied all the principles of Springsteen as far as my work was concerned.
What are the principles?
Just that you have to just really make everything about that third album and those, has to be better than that second album. Just that much better.
So you think the third album's the key album?
In those days, when you're making records like that. Now, I don't know what's the third album, the first album. So many things are confusing right now. But in those days, it was you built it because there wasn't, SoundCloud. You just built it and had to sell every song door to door. If you got a hit on the radio. But so the third album, if you got to make a third album, that means you've been touring now for 3 or 4 years. And at a certain point, you've got to pull out. You've got to go for the lead. You know what I mean? And that's the time around the third album. I just had a conversation with Kendrick Lamar at my house about that before when he's making this album.
That's a great name drop. I really like.
What?
No, it's just great. I've always wanted to do a podcast with somebody who said I just had a conversation with Kendrick Lamar. I'm on the edge of my seat now.
Well, Dre signed him to
I know.
to Aftermath, right? So he was at my house and he was doing something with us, and he I said to him, you're on your third album, because he was on Interscope.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm not at Interscope anymore, but I still him and Top Dog are fantastic. So I said, Kendrick, you're on your third album. First of all, don't make it on the road like everybody's doing their records right now. Take time off and make it, because it's the most important album you're going to make in your young life, in your 20s and 30s. Because you get this right, you'll go, rather than if it's just okay. And he wrote me a note saying that he really appreciated that because it inspired him. But he's one of
So you're saying take like 3 months off?
No.
4?
No.
How much time?
What's wrong with the music business right now is that artists are convinced that there's no money in recording, so they spend all their time on the road.
Yeah.
So
doing shows.
That means they're not making records. So they're spending less time in the studio. Less time in the studio is going to possibly make inferior records.
Yeah. So you think now that you gave him that advice, this next one, if he listens to it, this next one will be the one?
No, the third album. That's this album out right now.
Oh, I thought you gave him that advice recently.
No.
Oh yeah, I'm with you now. Okay.
Yeah. No.
So did he thank you in the liner notes?
Oh, he was so sweet. No. But he wrote me a note. I'm
Do they have liner notes anymore?
I'm not sure how much it influenced him, but he got it. And because people don't think like that now. They just drop singles and run around. It's tough. It's tough for artists right now.
It was the rare album that actually felt like an album in 2017. Like there was a coherence to it.
That's what I'm saying.
The titles look cool.
Had that? Adele, Ed Sheeran, Kendrick, people that take the time off and make the records. You can't make the records because somebody in Dubai wants to pay you $500,000. So you go to Dubai, leave the studio, and go make a record, and not make a record. So that's what I think. That's one of the things the record industry is suffering from right now. People are not putting time into the records that they should.
You almost can't even call it a record industry anymore. It's like a song industry.
Yeah,
or a song factory.
I want to know, with all that's going on in the world right now, where's Marvin Gaye? Where's Stevie
I swear
Wonder?
to God, I was going to ask you this, because we talked earlier about the 70s and how the music that came out of all these different things that were going on. Then you saw it again in the 90s. Why isn't that happening yet
I don't know.
2016,
I
17?
keep waiting.
Kendrick's
Kendrick's
tapped
the guy,
into it.
Absolutely. There's a few people, but Kendrick has it all. Kendrick has the music, the lyric, the attitude, the idea, the inspiration. Kendrick's got it. Kendrick has that thing, that Patti Smith had.
Who else do you think had that?
Oh, I mean,
that you worked with? Is it a short list or is it a...
Bono had it, John Lennon had it, Bruce Springsteen had it. I've been fortunate to be involved with a lot of people that saw music in a way to move the needle both socially and popular culture, and read the world and repeated it and spoke for it, but naturally the greatest of all time is Bob Dylan, but
wow, you're giving him the GOAT title.
Oh yeah, that's easy.
Really?
Yeah, and great. I'll give you another one. The greatest record executive of all time, Berry Gordy. Simple. When Berry Gordy was making records, his artists weren't allowed off the bus down south, and this guy crossed over him.
Right.
Made pop music, made urban music acceptable in pop music, and took it over. What he did was a miracle, and those records are one better than the other. None of us after him had that.
Yeah.
Had to deal with that.
And you worked with Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, I did Belladonna.
Who, according to my internet research, you also dated.
Yeah, I did. We did for the making of the album.
How long did that relationship last?
Well, I was completely a social cripple. And so I had no idea. I had no idea how to do anything socially. So I went out there, meet her, record the record, and she moved into my house. And we made the album. And then
she was like the iconic rock babe of the late 70s,
time,
early 80s.
No,
I know you realized that as it was happening.
I was so focused on not getting the work right and having a bomb album that we never went anywhere.
Yeah, because that was a weird era, right? Where people didn't even feel like if a woman was in a band, they shouldn't spin off and have their own album. And
that's exactly what happened. Fleetwood Mac did not want her to have her own album.
Yeah. Well, why would they want her to become more famous?
Right.
That means she's just going to leave the band.
And the same thing happened on that album with Tom Petty and Stop Dragging My Heart Around. That was Tom's song. I just did the same trick.
Now
did the same trick twice.
Yeah. So Fleetwood Mac, I've always been obsessed with. I know you weren't involved with Rumors, but I still think that's the most interesting album that's ever come out, just because of all the weird relationships that were involved.
That's the only thing. That's one of those albums, like Born to Run, that would make an incredible stage play.
Yeah, you're right. Could you have the behind the scenes stuff in it?
Excuse me?
I mean, everyone's dating everybody, and then they make all the songs are about the failed relationships.
That's what the play would be, right?
So you would have scenes, songs, and then scenes of the.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not doing it, but somebody should.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you did U2 Under the Blood Red Sky.
Under the Blood Red Sky,
which I wore into the ground on my 8-track back in '83. What was it? Was the 8-track, right?
Yeah, there was some 8-tracks involved in that. And what happened was I was down in the dumps, and I started to become a producer. I was producing established artists, and I couldn't get any young artists because the label, I was too expensive or whatever labels.
Yeah.
They thought I'd have too much influence, or,
Oh.
So I was working with Bob Seger and Stevie Nicks, who were great, and Dire Straits, who were great. But I wanted a new artist, and my ex-wife called me, was at the US Festival. Actually, she was working for Westwood One, and she was covering it. She goes, "There's a guy down here you've got to see." And I flew down, and I saw U2 playing.
So it's like 1982?
The US Festival.
Yeah.
And I followed them to Ireland, and I tortured them until they worked with us.
I mean, that was like a great era to torture you too.
Then I did Rattle and Hum with them 5 years later.
I was going to ask you about that because I was in college when that came out, and coming off the Joshua Tree, that was about as anticipated of a next album.
Yeah, so they
for
kind
a
of took a
popular
left
album
turn.
that I can remember.
It was smart what they did. They took a left turn. They went to live sort of studio album combined. And, smart what they did, because you look back on that album. That album is actually a great album.
Oh, it's loaded.
It
was weird. People were like weirdly a tinge disappointed with it when it came out.
That's right.
Because they couldn't win with whatever they released.
That's right. But you go back and listen now. That Desire is an incredible. Angel of Harlem.
Oh yeah.
We went all over the country to record that album.
There's a really good documentary about them that not a lot of people have seen, about the couple years after they made that album, when they almost broke up, and then they ended up going to Germany, and it was kind of that fork in the road moment that a lot of bands have.
Yeah, that was
where they've had some success, and it's either going to keep going or it's going to end.
That was after Rattle and Hum.
Yeah.
Look, I stopped producing records after that. I started Interscope. That's how hard that record was to make.
That's how hard Rattle and Hum was?
Yeah, it was brutal.
It finished you? For
me, yeah. Yeah. They, as Bono would say, and he says it in the documentary, he said, well, we broke them. I couldn't do it. I I'm done.
When it's hard, is it because the group's fighting with each other? Is it because they're being perfectionists? What makes it hard?
You can't get what you want. You can't get what you want, and you won't settle for something that, unless it's what you want. And Bono and the band are really like that. And to a certain extent, I'm like that. But as the producer, it's all going through you. All the energy's going through you. The music's going through you. So you're getting hit with all of it. And that album, at that moment, I was producing records for about 15 years already. And I just said, you know what? Then I heard them talking and saying, they didn't ask me to do the follow-up album.
Yeah.
But I think it was Achtung Baby.
Achtung Baby is the next one.
And I heard them saying they were going to go to Berlin to record it. I said, I'm not going to Berlin.
You're like, I'm out. Good luck, guys.
They didn't ask me, but I said, even if they asked me, I'm not going to Berlin. So I started a record company, and it was Interscope. So that kind of worked out. So
when you start a record company, what happens? Did you do it with your own money? Did you have a partner? How'd you do it?
My partner, Ted Field, put the money up. I brought some money in from Atlantic Records with that. I was getting a deal with, so we brought that money together. And Tom Wally and John McClain were working for Ted. And we started Interscope, and there was something about the combination of the people that just caught fire. And it became like, it was one thing after the other. It just kept working, you know?
How much of it was being shrewd and how much of it was luck?
You know, I think that I got to be honest with you. There were some talented people at Interscope.
Yeah.
John McClane's an extraordinarily talented person. The found Dr. Dre for us, brought him in. Tom Wally, who discovered Tupac, really talented. And Ted was very talented. So I'd have to say that the Interscope people was a really good team.
Probably a different element of characters with Interscope, like some unsavory characters, like we talked about earlier, like some of the people that they ran around with. Like, did you ever think, not that your life was in danger, but like, did you ever think shit, I'm worried. I'm a little worried about myself here.
There were times where it was scary, because it's not just the guys, it's the guys,
the hanger-on guys,
all the guys that are trying to get to the guys. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, East Coast, West Coast breaks out. And you got a mess. And, it's music. But at that time, I don't think there's ever been anything like that in the history of the music business. And this documentary covers it like crazy. It really, it shows that whole thing and that era in episode 3 really powerfully. And the director did a good job because it was scary. It was dangerous. It was great. It was awesome. And there were certain things that were horrible. So like a lot of, and then we had Marilyn Manson and Trent Reznor at the same time as well. So we had it from both sides. And then Time Warner, that's when the government came out against us. And Time Warner, we were able to get out of our deal and move over to Universal because they didn't want to put the music out.
How did you get involved with Geffen?
Geffen's just been a friend. John Landau, Springsteen introduced me to Geffen, and he's been an older brother. And actually, David taught me everything I know about business. Geffen taught me.
So you're still good with Geffen?
Oh, yeah.
Because people are either all in or all out on him with
I'm
no in
all
between.
in all the time, always, forever. I've never thought about he's the greatest, man. He smart as anything. He still is. And he taught me really the art of business, because it's an art form. If you're the really good guys.
Give me like 2 tips.
Bank of America. No.
Just like two good lessons from him.
Well, it's funny. He there's a lot. Like, for example, when I was going through that whole thing at Time Warner, and I thought we were going to get thrown out, he looked at me very calmly and said, "You're not that lucky." Because he knew what they were doing was bullshit.
Yeah.
Based on lyrics, it was a red herring. It was nonsense. So he kind of calmed me down. I said, "Wait, getting out's a good thing. Okay, let me get out, because then you still got the company."
Yeah.
So, but he's always there on stuff like that. Always
chessboard stuff.
Clear. Just the shortest distance between any 2 spaces is David Geffen. And. He's an awesome guy in this area.
So you and Dre, you do Beats. Beats takes off.
Mm-hmm.
then eventually you, like many other people, saw the potential of a streaming company. You start that, and then Apple eventually buys everything.
Yeah.
And now you're still in charge of Apple Music, right?
I'm in charge of Apple Music with a bunch of people. And
so what's your inner circle? How many people are actually running this thing?
Apple Music? Well, there's probably 4 or 5 people that are doing it together, the senior people. But then there's a lot of people that work there naturally. And we have we're trying to build something with elegance. We're trying to build a relation between the audience and the artist that bring some elegance to it, because the competition is free music, and it's you have to bring something to the party. The service has to be of service.
Yeah,
it has to be a reason to grab you in to say, okay, he's helping me. If we're not helping you, why are you going to sign up when you can just go get the music for free?
What's the best criticism that has been levied about Apple Music in the last 2 years?
Well, in the early days, the UI was very complicated, and it's not anymore. That's that was true, and we fixed it. That thing was that's one of them, and that was the main one. The UI was just not right.
Do you feel like there has to be a winner in this streaming thing, or can 10 people be doing it at the same time?
No, streaming has to be a winner. We're not sure about that yet.
Okay.
There's only 100 million people on streaming. Of course, there's a free tier. The streaming's issue. Now, it is so worth $10 a month to get all the music in the world. If you use it, there's so much depth in there. We have things like, I just go in and we have a whole radio segment, right, where I just patch in my favorite Bob Dylan song, and it plays me a different radio station every day. That is so awesome, because we also have human curators where we make the list. We have people to make the list personally.
Yeah.
You know? And so Apple Music is very, very, very musical. And so it's worth it, but it's hard to explain to people that, music is, if it's free, why am I paying for it?
Well, you're selling it to at least the under 30 generation, like these two guys over here. They're used to not paying for stuff.
That's right.
And being able to cut corners and sneak around and get through this or go in this link, and now you're getting it
That's
anyway.
why you have to be of service. You have to be great. You have to hook them through.
So you're trying to do it through like DJs, through different channels, through curation.
Like we have a thing on the service called For You, which every day when you wake up, there's new music for you. Like, for example, I've
seen that. I've always ignored it on my Apple.
Man, I'll play you mine from today. And here's mine from today. You ever play music on here? On
what?
On the radio, on your podcast?
No, we can
license it, right?
We can't
but
now.
Look, here's what, this is crazy. This is what it served me today.
Stevie Nicks?
No.
Oh.
What it thinks that I'm going to like.
Oh.
Apple Music. So here it starts with this.
Springsteen.
Right. Then it goes to this. The Ramones. I want to be sedated.
Yeah. Okay.
Then it goes to this. Then it goes to this.
So that knows you really well.
Then it goes to this. And then it goes to this.
Wow.
Okay.
That thing knows you.
And it keeps going. So I'm saying it knows me. And that is what we're really working on. Make your life easier and give you, like, that playlist. I know tomorrow morning I will be swimming with this playlist.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you win and Spotify can win at the same time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if streaming wins, we all win. There's plenty of room, man. There's plenty of room.
I think streaming's going to win. The thing I can't figure out is the subscription stuff. And
that's what I'm calling streaming.
Because we're seeing in the digital media.
Streaming is one. Subscription's got to win. I phrased it wrong.
Because we're seeing it with, digital media. And you're seeing now newspapers like the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and New York.
Streaming is one.
They figured it out.
It's will subscription music win? And I'm hopeful.
What would be the biggest obstacle to it winning? Other than young people?
Free. The labels have licensed their music for free.
Where do you see podcasts fitting into this whole thing?
Podcasts, we're starting to do them on Apple Music, and I think podcasts are really interesting and great ways to learn things and understand. And, on-demand stuff is fantastic. So we're very bullish on podcasts at Apple.
Okay. Because they control like 70% of them, basically. Like, I think for most people's downloads, I know with ours, it's definitely like probably 70% get them through iTunes.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're bullish on them, you know. We're going to take it a little more serious as well once we get, there's so much to do, though.
So all these great people you worked with, is there a common thread with what made them great? When you think about like Springsteen and Dre and John Lennon and Bono, is there something?
The lack of compromise.
Lack of compromise.
Yeah. They will not compromise. That's it. Period. You couldn't buy, rent Bruce Springsteen. You can there's nothing that you have that he wants. And that's the most frightening thing in the world.
So this documentary is July 9th. HBO, 4 parts. Like 4 days in a row? How are they doing
4
it?
4 days in a row.
4 days in a row.
Yeah.
This is great because there's never anything on in July. July is like when sports dies except for baseball and all this, you know.
Yeah, I mean.
There's very rarely anything going on.
I think it's meant to inspire, you know, and it's very truthful.
What's the most embarrassing thing you can say about Eddie Q in this podcast? Because he might be listening. I've known him for a while, so you can be mean if you want.
Eddie Q, there's a lot of embarrassing things like that. No, he's a beast, you know. I live down near him in Cabo as well, you know, and I work with him all the time. And he's in your face. He's just a guy that just tells you the way he hears and feels it. You know what I mean? He's a beast of a guy and a great cat. And guy from Silicon Valley, he's a lot like a content guy. He breathes and he feels like a very creative, an artistic person because he has a great feel for what you're doing. And, you know, he's a sports fanatic, you know, and I find him to be I'm very lucky that he's the guy that bought our company.
So what do the next 5 years look like for you?
Oh, man, I'm 64 years old, man. You know what I'm saying? I just want them to be there right now. So, that's what they look like.
Jimmy, thank you. That was fun.
Thank you, man. All right.
Thanks so much to Jimmy Iovine. Thanks so much to Daryl Morey. Don't forget, we're going to run something else with him on the Ringer NBA show, so look out for that. Thanks to CreditWise from Capital One. Remember, the CreditWise app helps you track the key factors that keep your credit health in shape. With CreditWise, you can check your TransUnion credit report at any time for signs of error, theft, or fraud. The app will also send automatic email alerts when your credit report changes. Download the free CreditWise app today. And don't forget House of Carbs, Joe House's new food podcast, which is going to be absolutely extraordinary. It's launching this week. Nephew, when are we launching it? Like, could be tonight, tomorrow?
Could be late tonight, tomorrow, yeah.
Could be late tonight. Could be dropping after you hear this podcast. Could be tonight. Could be July 4th. Fireworks coming out of your belly. House of Carbs. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, wherever you listen to them. Very excited for this podcast. And also, since we're talking about podcasts, Cousin Sal's Against All Odds. The podcast this week, the July 4th one, where he interviews Matt Stoney, the Degenerate Trifecta and Cousin Sal. They went to the Captain Morgan's Make Believe Casino and tried to figure out who would win a fight on July 4th between Mr. Miyagi and Rambo. And it's one of the great 5 minutes in podcast history. It's really spectacular. Rambo was a minus 750 favorite. And I would just say that 3 of the 4 people went with the underdog. The reasons were spectacular. I was very jealous. I'm very jealous of the Make Believe Casino in general. It's a great idea. I might just steal it. I might just start doing them for my podcast too. Anyway, check that out. Enjoy July 4th. Be responsible with fireworks. Watch your kids around the fireworks and don't eat too much. Be back on Wednesday with a full free agency recap. Hopefully Gordon Hayward has picked a team right by then. That's it for the BS podcast.